sky, and your spirit was one with me. Your wings span the mighty ocean. Your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your might and glory, vanished from the sky, leaving just another story. This is man-made life. They tell of how you fell from the sky. You once proud beauty.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Free American Hour. This segment deals with the history of Lucifer and the beginning at the first passing of the planetary conjunctions and destruction of a highly advanced race called Atlanteans. For this segment of the Free American Hour, my name is Lucky, and I am relating the greatest discovery on Earth. This is a segment out of a something that was written over 40 years ago. Keep that in mind. I've just returned from my journey, and I'm dictating this from my memories. The dry desert wind whipped my oilskin. The damn helmet's chin strap was rubbing a raw spot on my neck, and my sunglasses did little to prevent the dust from filling my eyes. The Harley Softail was squirrely on a loose-packed, rut-filled dirt road. I was alone as usual. This mountainous, deserted terrain is not the kind most riders or tourists would take on a Sunday ride, even fewer on a Wednesday. Besides, how could I explain to other bikers of what I was looking for? For the millionth time, I cursed God for putting me through this. I wished I could just forget about my quest, lay back and enjoy the pleasures the world had to offer. I still had my health, but my youthful, devilish good looks were long gone. Lost. Gray now streaked my mustache and goatee. My hair, usually tied tight in a ponytail, contained more silver than black. Still, the search consumed me. I was looking for one more obscure lead. A UFO reports in the early 60s, a demented old man in the mountains, Indian tales of spirits in these mountains, and the ancient white man who lived forever. I'd followed rumored and legend through the rainforests of the Amazon, through the jungles surrounding Angkor Wat, and to the mountains of ancient Tiwanaga, an island on Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. Revisiting the ancient sites had been the hardest on me. In my mind's eye, I could see the happy populace at play in what had once been a resort. I could still see the statues and arches and massive buildings as they had been. I could see the old civilization. There's no one else on earth could see it. Reality came rushing back to me as the front wheel of my Harley hit a loose rock. I fought the handlebars to regain control and felt a small surge of pride at my mastery of this simple machine. I should have bought a Jeep, but I'd grown tired. I'd grown very fond of this machine and the society within a society it represented. I was at ease with the coarse, rough, good-hearted men who lived the last free lifestyle in an increasingly oppressive world. I've always gravitated to these kinds. Unconsciously, my pills fondled my stash, the hollow keychain containing the tiny pills that kept me alive, and wondered how much longer I would continue to take them. Maybe my time had finally come. Maybe, I do not like this new world order and the limitations it places upon me. I sensed the object of my obsession had already departed. Maybe the slogan in the '60s had been based on fact. I thought maybe God really was dead. His presence is lacking in this era. The children no longer fear him. They don't respect their elders or life itself. There's no honor, no responsibility, no fear of retribution. Religion was reduced to feeding the poor, and there's no fear of God and the devil in man anymore. Just as well. I'm tired of the whole thing. Lucky was my nickname, but luck had not been with me in my quest. There were still a few miles to go before the road ran out. I thought of the rash of UFO sightings. I was convinced the government must have stumbled upon the secret of the magnetic drive in its research, or found an alien craft or one of the ancient ships that once plied the skies of the planet. The vast number of sightings had made my search far more difficult. Until now. Around a turn, high in the mountains, there was the lake I knew would have to be there. I felt the chill run up my back. Could this be the home of God? I felt like Indiana Jones seeing the Holy Grail for the first time. Deep in the desert of Nevada, there's a secret base which houses the U.S. versions of UFOs. It's a massive structure built 16 stories underground. Giant doors open to allow helicopters and saucers access. The place I was looking for would not be that elaborate. It'd have to be far off the track, beaten by civilization. It'd have to have a large body of water. It'd have to be high in the mountains. It would have to be deep enough to hold a mystery that has held mankind in its grasp for the last 10,000 years. I parked the bike on the water's edge. No one but a few disappointed fishermen and some four-wheelers had ever come this way. The lack of fish in this lake was one of the reasons I was here. The lake with no name and no fish. It was about a half a mile across. I slowly walked the shoreline, watching for something only I would see. My eye was drawn to a large rock formation that rose from the depths of the lake. The massive rocks reminded me of those scattered about the shores of Lake Titicaca, but these were still rough and uncarved. The smallest of the boulders would have weighed more than 2 tons. No one could have thought of them being moved by anything short of volcanic eruption, but to my eye they appeared to have been carefully placed and stacked. There was no natural outcropping of this type of rock for miles. My lifelong search was over, I felt. Here on the banks of a lake in a tiny mountain range in the middle of the Mojave Desert lay the answer to mankind's greatest mystery. I ran shaking fingers over the hairline seams in the rocks until I found a hidden latch. The 1-ton solid granite door swung open to reveal a staircase leading under the lake as I knew it would. The air felt cool against my windburned face, and I unsheathed the small maglite from my belt. There were no cobwebs, rats, few insects, so tight was the seal. The tunnel had been burned through solid rock, ran 50 feet beneath the lake bed. The tunnel ended abruptly. I directed the flashlight's beam upward and reflected off a mirrored, seamless metal surface with 5 indentations in the center. I reached up hesitantly. All of the things go wrong was running through my mind. The best scenario was that my touch would not do anything. The worst, then there was nothing above my head but a ton and tons of mud and water, both of which would come crashing down on my head before I could escape down the tunnel and find the inside trigger to the stone door. There was no time to turn back. I'd invested much more than a lifetime searching for this. I reached up, placed my fingers in the depressions like magic. A tiny circular crack appeared in the metal skin. The circle slid up, inward and over. A metallic ladder slid out silently. I became aware I'd been holding my breath and inhaled deeply. I climbed the ladder. I knew instantly I was the only living being aboard the ship. Life support was still functioning and would continue to do so into infinity. It had been built by a society that was not based on planned obsolescence. I followed dusty corridors unerringly toward the control room. The dust of my windbreaker was swiftly sucked up by automatic vacuums before it hit the non-skid soft metallic floor. Doors slid open to reveal the control room. Here were the only signs of clutter I'd seen since on board. A cup here, a plate there, a robe cast over a control panel that would guide the great ship no more. The room was dimly lit by instruments. As I entered, the movement triggered a brighter set of lights, and I saw him in the corner leaning over a charting table. His long white hair flowed over the edge of the table, and his head rested on the book he'd been writing. In the sterile atmosphere, there was no decomposition. He looked as though he was merely asleep. I half expected to see his eyes open and a smile shine through the snow-white beard as he saw me. Before touching him, I removed my jacket. I didn't want to soil the spotless white robes. Even in death, he was massive. It took all of my strength to lift him from the chair, and carry him into his cabin off of the control room. Laying him on his bed, I stared at him for fully 5 minutes as silent tears ran down my cheeks. This was not the Indian I had envisioned. I felt none of the hatred that had welled up in my soul in the past. The quest that had driven me was over. I had found my grail, but no joy or satisfaction. I had found the foundation of every legend, of every religion. I now possessed the greatest secret in the universe. I now held the key to power beyond mortal man's comprehension. I had access to knowledge forbidden man for centuries. I had won the greatest game ever played, yet I felt nothing but emptiness and loneliness. Returning to the control room like misty ghost, the almost ancestral memories flooded my consciousness. Sit down on the throne-like captain's chair, touch this, and the craft would rise silently, responsively, immediately to an altitude above the highest satellite. Touch there, and a laser beam would carve the greatest stone into an engraved portal. Another touch, and it would be lifted, transported, and transplanted with micromillimeter accuracy. The same button would part seas, smash walls, and destroy cities. I touched nothing. Instead, I walked over and sat down in the seat he had died in. I opened the book he had been writing in. The entries were a combination of pictographs and runes no modern man had ever seen. There were no more than 2 or 3 archaeologists could have translated. Opening the book I read, I was mad once. Now only after so many years can I see clearly. I am afraid it's too late to undo all I've done. I hope that someday someone will be able to read this chronicle without their being blinded and prejudiced by the chain of events I, in my madness, started. Under these circumstances, I suppose any man might have made the same errors, followed the same path. Still, I do not record this in an effort to seek forgiveness or even pity. By the time anyone is capable of understanding, truly understanding, the world I came from, I will have been long dead, my bones dust, hidden from all eyes, in a tomb that contains all the knowledge of the most advanced civilization in the world. A civilization that died in spite of all our technological skills, all our mental achievements. I'm not a scientist. I am an old man, alone with my memories. My younger days were spent in the same pursuits as most men. Women, travel, excitement. I was one of the fortunate ones that born into a world rich in material things so treasured by men, a world without war. The secret of near mortality was ours, yet from my birth I knew the shadow of fear, a fear I did not feel as strongly as my father and his generation because of its ever-present nearness. In fact, in my adolescence, I spent my life preparing for impending doom. My scientific colleagues had other names for it. Celestial conjunction, the conjunction, but the members of my crew simply called it the end of the world as we knew it. For over 200 years and 50 years, everyone had known the exact day that the end would occur. It began for me a week before the day of conjunction. I left my wife, Izzy, Isis, at her home to do some last-minute packing. I had one last meeting to attend at the Temple of Learning before we left. I was in no hurry. This was quite possibly the last time I would be able to walk the shaded paths of the most beautiful city on earth. Long ago we learned to live in harmony with nature, and I breathed in the fragrance of 100 blooming flowers. I can still remember the chattering of the monkeys and the squirrels and the trees lining the way through the thick growths of shrubs, flowers. I could see the vacant, desolate-looking houses of my neighbors, most of whom had already left. There were not more than 30,000 of us left on earth. They were our more unfortunate neighbors, of course. I'd spent over 50 years before the end trying to educate them and prepare them for the coming Holocaust. I'd been unable to convince myself we were all of the same origin, that we were all Homo sapiens. I imagine if their ancestors had been the one to discover the longevity drug 5,000 years ago instead of us, they would be the ones leaving for the stars today, and we would be the poor, frightened savages left behind to take our chances. I strolled by the spaceport in time to see the last of the ferries taking off with its load of colonists destined to spread the seed of mankind to the far reaches of the galaxies. Our one-way trip, the last grasp at survival of the race. Up above were the gigantic interstellar liners. At 2 o'clock today, they would activate the drives that would push them near speeds that of light. If we'd only had a little more time, I feel sure we would have learned the faster-than-light travel. After that, it would have been possible for the colonists to turn around in that event after the conjunction there was still on Earth. But we hadn't. We couldn't take the chance of letting the ships stay in the neighborhood of the solar system. There was no way we could predict whether the sun would go nova or the chain in a chain reaction. Nobody has ever recorded the effects of worlds and collisions. Silver ship floated gently out of sight of the clouds, not really sure of my feelings. I turned my eyes toward the 4 mighty ships left on the empty-looking fields. Shining silver circular ships, each one of them measured several hundred feet across. They've been jokingly called the missionary missiles, and to my irritation, the chariot of the gods, referring to the way some of the natives deified us. In the last 50 years, we've been traveling all over the globe in an attempt to prepare the neighboring peoples for the coming cataclysm. We violated 5,000 years of isolation from our fellow members of the human race. We've been forced to endure ridicule of the people who felt nothing but contempt for the less advanced races of our globe. In the final analysis, we had pointed out we could not be sure who would survive. Therefore, it was our duty to try to ensure that the knowledge we had gained would not perish. We could not let the human race sink into savagery. We also did quite well financially, trading our technological knowledge and assistance for a variety of agricultural products, mine products, and all other regions of the world. It was a noble cause, but I can remember wondering at the time if I had sacrificed lives to my wife and crew by choosing to remain on Earth. My crew had volunteered to stay with me to the end. They were in the ship now. The balance of the population decided to remain on their home planet, sat huddled in their homes, held by the territorial imperative, hoping against reason that Earth would survive, and in doing so, spare them. I was counting on it too, but I had all the advantages and safety of a craft that was impervious to gravity or the elements. I had every edge our technology could give us. Reluctantly, I tore my eyes from my ship and walked briskly across the broad plaza separating the spaceport and the temple. Normally, people were bustling to and fro, lovers sitting on the park benches. Today, only 2 figures were on a mile square plaza. They were setting the course to intercept me. As they came closer, I recognized them as the 2 natives that had come with us on our last trip, from our last trip into Egypt. The tall, broad-shouldered one was called Gil, somewhat of a celebrity among his people. Gabe had met him and was so impressed he requested permission to bring him back. It seemed to me that people thought Gilgamesh was one of the gods. As a matter of fact, he did bear a striking resemblance to Luce, but no one had the nerve to suggest such a thing, and Luce wasn't about to admit to anything. As I read this document written by my old friend Tetragrammaton Lord, I couldn't help but smile. All the hostility that had been between us evaporated as I read this document, sitting in the ship I had once commanded. I started telling this story to a few others 40 years ago, dropping a bucket in my lifespan, I suppose. Although accidents happen. But back to reading the last will and testament of the entity I called Captain Lord, or as some of the natives called him, Yahweh. someone that had been angry, reading this now, sharing this with you, it's pretty unique. I remember Gil. Yeah, he could have been mine. His mind, Gilgamesh's mind, was exceptionally quick to grasp concepts, says Tet Lord here. He had all the qualities of a born leader. He and Gabe had become fast friends. They both appeared to be about the same age, but Gabe was 280, Gil was only 20. I was a little concerned that Gabe had let him wander off this close to takeoff time. His companion was his friend servant named Inky, short, stocky youth, typical of his race. Inky followed Gil around like a little puppy, though he could be transformed into a raging bull if he thought Gil was endangered. Near me, he was always seemed to be in a state of religious ecstasy. Although I was running late for the meeting. I stopped and accepted a purple pipe that Gil always carried. He kept it filled with his personal stash, and when I inhaled, I wondered if perhaps his people weren't keeping the best for themselves and giving us the part they'd normally throw away. Maybe they weren't as stupid as most people like to think. Gil faced me with respect, but none of the awe that was prevalent in his friend's attitude. Captain Lord, he said, after I passed pipe back to him, completing a little ceremony, I'd like to request permission to join you in the last days, sir. I promise not to be a hindrance. I'll do my best to be useful. He stood straight and tall, his eyes only an inch below my gaze directly, a thing that most people of the backward races are unable to do. I suppose I do present a rather unnerving sight. My hair and beard are long, bushy, and snow white tops off at 6'4" makes me look old, wise, and terrible when I'm angry. I'm not, at least I wasn't back then. That was over 5,000 years ago. I was only 330. I was just prematurely gray. I was still sane and not terrible at all then. I put my hand on Gil's shoulder. Although he had not mastered mind-to-mind communication, I almost felt as if he were one of us. I'd be delighted to have you on board my ship, Gil. He beamed at me, stammered his thanks. I told him to rush back to the ship and aid Gabe and the other angels, as I call the ones who have earned their wings, in the last-minute loadings. I braced myself as he ran back to the ship, turned back to the meeting. I got more than a few dirty looks from other captains and Archie, the resident scientist, when I entered the conference room. Here he talks about me again, and I get a little self-conscious, referring to mine and myself in the third person. But he said in his diary here, my best friend and co-captain, the only member of my crew who was unafraid to stand up to me, loose arch, eased the tension. I remember the words so well. To see them written in his diary created incredible complex emotions in me. Tet Lord, I remember saying, the only man who would dare to be late for the end of the world. I said it with a smile. Didn't get much of a laugh, but it did allow him to slide into a seat next to me quietly while everyone gave me dirty looks for my poor taste. It's okay, he still had a smile on my face. We'd grown up together, he said. That's true. Tet said I was only a year older than him, but he was one of the lucky people that would never have a problem, not that I considered it a problem, with his hair turning white. He sported a mustache and goatee, still do. He had never married, but always seemed to have a flock of women around him, around us when we were in port. I was able to find such beautiful creatures among the plain, dumpy native women I'll never know. That's why we nicknamed him Lucky. I always wondered about that. Old Archibald, the chief archivist, and the last real scientist left on Earth resumed his speech, throwing me one last look. I tried not to look bored. I'd heard it all before. As I was saying, Ted, that we are counting quite heavily on you four men. He nodded his head to include the other three captains and their mates, to preserve the knowledge we've accumulated over the years. We've known for 250 years that the planets Mars and Venus would approach Earth's orbit in the week to come. We knew it would be close, but we did not know how to calculate exactly how close. The resulting contact may completely destroy our world, escaping that we can be sure that the ensuing upheavals may destroy most of the sentient life on this planet. We have provided for you and the men and women of your crew the optimal survival craft for a collision between planets. It's your task to survive and lead the surviving population of the world along the paths of civilization. If some of you should survive but your ship is lost, there have been 3 libraries established, the structures calculated to survive the catastrophes. He pointed out the locations in Egypt and one in Asia. It will be up to you to make your way there, establish yourself as the keeper to the keys of civilizations, and it's hoped, of course, with a miracle we'll survive here too. Even now the destructions have begun. We've got reports that the expected meteor shower has started. The space station has been destroyed. I can only urge you to get to your ships as soon as possible. We stood as one man. Old Arch looked at us, his face struggling to maintain his stern countenance, and I hope one day soon we will meet again. Goodbye and good luck. He turned and was out of the room quickly. We were out of our chairs and rushing to our respective ships. He says that I fell in step with him, and he explained there's a little more. Waved an envelope containing more detail and instructions. I think old Archie just wanted to say goodbye to us, the product of his brainchild, Lou said with a thought. Archie had been the man that started the program. It was late afternoon. Out of habit, we looked up. Even in the night sky, you could see him plainly. Mars, to the primitive, bloody god of war. Odd how well the name seemed to fit. The god of war, bent on destroying Earth with his battle with the planet Venus. The Venus that would make her grand entry into the ballroom of the skies, or battleground if you prefer, to the west, a little later. Tonight, they would both be there. 2 huge, unwinking, unrelenting orbs in the midnight sky. Mars, bloody, glaring red, piercing, unwavering eye, bent on destruction. Venus, cloudy, mysterious. Her gas is trailing behind her like a silvery shimmering gown. Changing her appearance offers like a woman. Sometimes she appeared in the skies as a serpent breathing fire. The night sky was indeed a wonder. Even the brightness of our own moon paled in the face of the unearthly beauty and destruction that the heavenly messengers brought. We were walking back towards my house to pick up Isis, and a sharp thought from Luz turned my eyes upward. Even in the light I could see them plainly. 8 meteors, in rows of 2, in perfect geometrical procession. They were close, probably just reaching the upper reaches of the atmosphere, but in the vastness of the sky they gave the illusion of a team of fiery steeds pulling Mars across the sky. Phenomenon lasted for about 15 seconds before the pattern deteriorated and the meteors hit the thicker glasses. Then, like a team of